So in today's video, I'm going to discuss about how to prepare for your high school examination. And in this video, we will focus on what happens after class 10 or grade 10. So we are looking at the next 2 years, which culminates in your class 12 or grade 12 examination. Now, typically there are two types of high schools. One where you have a final board examination, which culminates at the end of class 12. And the second is a system of semester or yearly exams which give you some form of a GPA or a CGPA. And so I'll look at both these particular topics and tell you some broad frameworks about how to prepare for this particular exam. So now before we do that, let us look at why this examination system was framed. Essentially, the system of 10 plus 2 plus 3 or 10 plus 2 plus 4 was created, where you have 10 years of typical high school which ends at class 10 or grade 10, which is the kind of knowledge which all people are supposed to know to be productive members of a modern civilized society. So essentially that is why at the end of class 10 you have to take subjects such as mathematics, science, social science, humanities, and at least one or two languages, so that you can function in modern day society. And if people are talking about things such as genes or calculus or some basic concepts such as geometry, you would basically know some of these particular concepts and you would be able to engage in normal conversation in the civilized society. Now, when you go to the next two grades towards class 12, you have made some decision about your future career goals, and this will essentially help you to choose the subjects you study in these senior years of high school. So essentially you may at this point decide to study science stream or commerce or business stream or the arts and humanities stream. So these are some of the paths people take at this stage, and I have made a video on some of these aspects before. So I think what I'm going to say will apply to all these particular streams. So the first thing I would tell you is that you should concentrate your study from your textbooks. And this is especially important if your board or the institution which sets the particular papers has set out books on the topic or has indicated preferred books on the subjects. Because it's very likely that most of the questions and the thinking process of the people who are setting the examination comes from perusal of these particular texts. And so you will save a lot of time by reading the textbooks and not to get bogged down by the huge amount of material you can read if you choose several books and try to digest the material from them. And the reason for this is that publication is a big business and there are many companies which bring out books on all kinds of subjects such as physics, chemistry, mathematics, commerce, psychology, and so on. And the reason is that this market is so huge and there are a lot of people who will buy multiple books. So the sales possibility of a book written for the class 12 or the high school curriculum is very high compared to that written for college or compared to that written for graduate studies. So publishers are generally willing to take the risk of publishing any book on this particular theme. So you will find essentially tomes written on mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology at the level of class 12. And if you peruse further into these books, you will find that they will take the aspects of the syllabus which are specified and they will expand it to as great an extent as possible. And there is some intersection in what they present in these high school books and college material. So again, if your syllabus specifies something such as calculus, that subject is a very vast subject, and so you can go very deep into calculus, but what is required for your board exam may be much less. So that is something which you need to keep in mind. So again, this kind of sudden change from class 10 to class 12 has a very deleterious impact on many people, because your reasonably thin books suddenly turn into tomes, and this can be psychologically damaging for many young students. So again, don't let this happen to you. Focus on the textbooks, focus on the board specified books in your particular field. And in case you do not understand the material after 2 or 3 readings of this material and you have consulted teachers and friends, then you can refer to a reference book on the particular subject, and you can always get these reference books from your library also, or from some different place. You don't need to necessarily buy a plethora of books on any given subject. Now, the second thing I would recommend is that you split your waking and sleep time into two parts. So basically, you need to sleep in a manner such that you have two sleep sets during a typical day and night period. So essentially, you may get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and study from that time to your breakfast, and then continue to go to your school or do something else if you need to do. And then you can take an afternoon nap. So what this particular procedure helps you to do is it helps you to cement your memory and to retain the material which you have studied in each of these waking cycles. So whenever you go to sleep for a reasonable amount of time, your brain will essentially process all this material and shift a lot of this information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. And this is something which you need to do in these particular years of high school, because a lot of the exams do require substantial memory based content and testing. The next thing I would suggest is that you do as many old examination papers as possible, and again, don't go to an extreme level in this. I would recommend something like 10 exam papers. Don't try to do 40 or 50 exam papers, because then you may get burnt out, because a lot of these exam papers will start looking very similar. So if you take the last 10 years papers, you need to do these, and don't wait till the end of class 12 to do all these papers. You should try to do partial papers during your 2 years of this particular situation. So again, if you have finished half of the syllabus, you can try to do half of the paper and see how you are doing. So this will help you essentially close the feedback loop. So essentially, when you are studying and you are being tested by your school, that's a good thing. But you also need to self-test yourself as to how you are going to do in the board examination. And by doing this particular testing, you can get feedback from the test performance as to what are your strengths and weaknesses, and you can remedy these particular lacunas in your preparation. Now, the next thing is, don't study all the time. Take some time off to play some games, and I would recommend playing games which involve some kind of motor skills, such as tennis, cricket, soccer, football, table tennis, badminton, and so on. Or if you are not able to play games because of constraint of space, or because you do not have partners with whom to play games, then you can do things such as walking, running, or going to the gym. Try not to play video games and such things, because they again will tax your eyes and create more problems for you in terms of your brain cells and neurons getting too tired and your synapses getting very debilitated because of this too much stimulation from the same type of thinking or the same type of problems. One more thing I would recommend is, this is not particularly a good stage to go on a diet, which some people try to do, and let your body dictate what you need to eat at this particular stage, because remember, the brain is a huge guzzler of food, and therefore you will find that when you do a lot of study, you will feel very famished, and so you need to feed your brain. So again, if you are cognizant about your health, you can go for these runs or go to the gym or play games, but do not compromise on your food at this stage and eat a well-balanced diet, because if you do not do that, you will feel very fatigued and you will not be able to put in the amount of work which is required for this important phase of your life. The final point I would say is that you should work as hard as possible during this particular stage. In fact, I remember that during this period, I probably worked the most in my life in terms of study. And this was because you may often have to combine your particular examinations for the board with competitive examinations or standardized tests. So try to make the maximum use of your weekends, of the summer vacations, of breaks during winter, of any breaks you may get during one of the festival seasons and so on. So this will certainly help you a lot, because you may need to go to school quite substantially to keep up with things and so on. One more point is that try to give as much importance to practicals as you give to theory, and this is something people neglect at this stage because the examinations tend to be highly theory focused and they are assured of marks in the practical in most situations. But it's very important to give a lot of importance to practicals, to learn the art of doing experiments, to make good notes and write reports in your own words. Do not try to copy things at this stage because that will set a bad precedent for your future goals. And this is important because not all the people are going to be good at theoretical and computational content. Many people are good at experiments, and very often people who become scientists or who go into medical professions may actually turn out better when they pursue the experimental fields. And this is what happens many times, is that people who are tested only in terms of theory, they find a lot of problems when they get into a real college setting and they have to do a lot of experiments, they have to do design work, they have to actually come up with components and so on. Finally, I think I mentioned in my previous video also that you should put a gap of at least 2 weeks to a month between any preparation you are doing for your high school tests and for your competitive exams or standardized tests. So essentially, if you are studying mechanics in your school, then you let this mechanics go on for about 1 month. You try to get as much of the knowledge of this subject from your books in physics, do as many problems as you can from your textbook, and then only you turn to the mechanics aspects which are there for the competitive exam. So this will certainly help you because it will cement the theoretical knowledge which is required to do these particular problems, and it will ensure that you have to study less and study in a more smart manner rather than just study hard. So again, this is something I recommend, to put a gap between the preparation for the board and between the competitive exams which you are trying to give. So again, these are some concepts I came up with to help high school students who are studying for the exam, and to give them some feedback as to how they can optimize their use of time and how they can also extract as much from the high school books and curriculum so that they become better scholars and better professionals in their own right down the road. So again, thank you very much for listening to me, and stay tuned to my channel for more videos on such topics. Thank you very much.